Hello and welcome to my happy creative place. My name is Irina and I'm the artist behind the brand of BZMA Studio. And on my channel, I share my artistic tips. I do a lot of Procreate artwork and illustration. I do some traditional media and I do some other activities, creative activities, which you will soon find out about if you follow me on YouTube. Thank you. In this video, I'm going to show you how I create seamless patterns in Procreate. And I'll be featuring my FOLKIO set, this one, which is a set, a huge collection of different Procreate assets like stamp brushes, artistic brushes, color palettes, textures, and whatnot. If you already have it, grab it. I'm going to show you how to create a seamless pattern using some of the brushes and some colors from that set. If you don't have it and if you would like to have it, you can purchase it on my channel. I'll leave the link down below. Also, it's important to mention that you don't have to have FOLKIO set to create the patterns, because the techniques I'm going to show you, you can apply them to any brushes, colors, or perhaps you want to use your own clip art to create those patterns. So just go ahead and use whatever you feel like using. Let's begin. Right, guys, in terms of hardware, you will need an iPad. I'm using an iPad Pro 12.9-inch screen, and I'm using Apple Pencil, second generation, I think, or Apple Pencil 2. In terms of software, you will obviously need Procreate installed on your iPad. And in terms of the resources we'll be using, in this particular tutorial, I'll be using my FOLKIO collection, but you can use whatever brushes and color palettes you prefer, because the techniques I'm going to show are going to be easily applied to any type of brushes or colors. So, but I'm going to show you which brushes I'm going to be using. So I'll be using FOLKIO botanical stamps. Some of them, I'll mention them in the next part, the particular ones. I'm going to be using FOLKIO Essential Artist Brush, which is outliner monoliner, to create my shapes for the motif. And I'm going to use some of the FOLKIO Delicate Details brushes. Again, the exact names I'm going to tell you, I'm going to mention in the next part. Yeah, I think that's in terms of the brushes. And the color palette I'm going to be using is Happy Folk. It's one of the color palettes in the FOLKIO collection. In terms of the colors, I'll obviously talk you through which particular swatches I'm going to be picking to create this or that element. However, all these colors, they work well together, they match perfectly, so whichever you prefer you can use, or just follow along and pick the ones I pick. So that's all for the tools and materials. The very first step we're going to create our canvas, our artboard. We're going to be needing square canvas, so we're going to click that plus icon in the top right corner of our iPad, and we're going to select square. Keep in mind that if you intend to get your pattern printed, if you want to print it at home, or if you want to use it on print-on-demand website, you will need high resolution of at least 300 dpi. Procreate automatically creates a square canvas of, I think, 132 dpi, which we're going to change right now. We're going to go to this range icon. We're going to select canvas, and we're going to select crop and resize. And if you select settings, you will see that's your dimensions of the artboard of the canvas, and you can see the DPI is 132 dots per inch, which is too low for the print. I mean, it will print, but the quality will be reduced. So you will need at least 300. So we're just gonna type in 300, and select done. So you can see that our canvas kind of became bigger in size. Next, at this point, you will definitely need to decide whether your pattern will be light on the darker background or the opposite, darker, more contrast pattern on a lighter background. It's important to select at this stage so you know what colors to pick for your pattern. I'll be demonstrating this in this tutorial. I'll be creating a contrast colorful pattern on lighter background. That's why I'm not going to change the background color. However, if yours going to be the opposite, I suggest that you just select some darker color for your background and already create all your elements on this dark background. As I said, mine's gonna be lighter so I can keep it white. And next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna pick the stamp brushes that I'm gonna be using for my pattern, for the elements. For that, I'm gonna open my FOLKIO set and I'm gonna choose FOLKIO botanical stamps first of all. And I'll be using like 3 main flowers from here. So first of all, I would like to choose the brush that is called Bloom 3. I'm going to select it and I'm going to stamp it wherever on the canvas because it's just a sketch that I'm going to be deleting later after I've colored the element in. On the same layer, I'm going to create another element which is Folk Bloom 7. I'm going to select it and I'm going to stamp it wherever. Another element on the same layer I'm going to create is Folk Bloom 5. And I will need 2 sketches of these. I will need a smaller one and I will need a bigger one. So these are the elements I'm going to be using for my main motif for my seamless pattern. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to color each element one by one. And I'm going to show you how to do that in an easy way. I'm going to reduce the opacity of this layer so my sketches are not too prominent. And I'm going to create a new layer. And I'm going to start coloring in. So I'm going to start with this flower. The brush I'm going to be using, as I said in the previous part, is FOLKIO Essential Artistic Brush Outliner Monoliner. So for this flower, as I said, keeping in mind that my pattern is going to be on the lighter background, I'm going to select this second swatch from the left on the very top row. And I'm going to color in 2 sort of like petals of this flower. For this, I'm going to outline the shape of the petal. And I'm going to drag and drop the color and fill this petal in. On the same layer, I'm going to create 1 more petal of this color in exactly same way. On the new layer, I'm going to create this middle petal and the color I'm going to use is this darker burgundy color. And the same, I'm going to create an outline and I'm going to drag and drop the color. On the new layer, because obviously you can see that my layers overlap. So for example, this element overlaps the petals. So I'm gonna grab this like orangey brown color. It's the 3rd one from the right on the top row. And I'm gonna outline this part and I'm gonna drag and drop it. And let's switch these layers on. You can always change the color. Like for example, I can see that this color is too close in shade to this color. So I'm just gonna change it to lighter versions. For that, I'm gonna select a new swatch and I'm just gonna drag and drop it here, so that's better. And I'm gonna create again a new layer, and I'm gonna color in the stem and the leaves. For that, I'm gonna use this green color, which is the third one in the bottom row, and I'm gonna create the stem, and I'm gonna fill in the leaves in the same manner, outlining and dropping the color to fill, outlining and dropping the color to fill. So now we've created our first element, and it's safe to flatten so we don't get lost in too many layers. So I'm going to just pinch them together, and that's our first flower done. The sketch is underneath. We didn't draw on the sketch layer, but we've created this element first. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to lock it, because I don't know, guys, how about you? I sometimes get carried away and start drawing on the same layer I've just created, which I shouldn't be doing. That's why I'm locking it. So Procreate doesn't allow me to draw on that one. And I'm going to switch the visibility off. Or, on the contrary, you can keep it on so you can create a harmonious look for your pattern, seeing how different elements gonna work together. So the next element I'm gonna color in is this flower. So I'm gonna create a new layer, and for the top part, I think I'll be using this color that I used for the center part of my previous flower. So I'm gonna select the swatch, and I'm gonna outline the shape of my flower, and I'm gonna drag and drop. And for the stem and the leaves on a new layer, I'm gonna use this darker green color, which is right here. It's the middle swatch in the bottom row, and I'm just gonna create a stem, and I'm gonna create the leaves that I'm gonna fill with this green color. And because this flower, you see, it's quite bulky, it's like a big chunk of solid color, I'm just gonna add a little bit of decorative elements on it, because if you switch it off, you can see that the stamp itself, it's got this like little lines. I would create a new layer on that, and I would use some lighter contrasting color. I think I'll take this nice pink color. It's the middle swatch in the top row. I'm going to maybe reduce the size a little bit, and I'm just going to create these lines that come from the center, closer to the stem, just to create a little bit more decorative feel to my flower. Right, let's switch the sketches off, and I think we are safe to flatten this flower. And now we've got two flowers ready, so I'm going to lock it again, and in the same way, I'm going to fill these two flowers. Right, so now our elements are created. They are all on separate layers because that's what we need. Let's unlock them because we'll be moving them around. And the first thing I suggest that you do is, well, let's delete the sketch layer. We don't need it anymore, so it doesn't get on the way. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna group these elements, and let's call it motif. That will be the elements of our main motif. And I'm going to duplicate this group to create a backup in case something goes wrong, which it can in Procreate when you accidentally drag an element beyond the edge. And so you have the backup to refer to. And let's lock it, and we can switch the visibility off and leave it. So next step we're going to create something nice with this composition, rearranging these elements of the main motif. So I'm going to start moving the elements around, finding a nice way. Another trick for you, you can always duplicate some of the elements and you can change the size of them so they look slightly different. I think I'm going to just, these are too similar in size, so I think I'm just going to increase the size of this one. Yeah, I like that. And I'm going to place it somewhere in the center. And I think that's going to be my main motif for my pattern. Before we begin making an actual pattern, let's do some preparations, which will include some duplication of different layers and groups. So, first of all, I would like to make a copy of this group, and I'm going to name it Elements. And I'm just going to drag it underneath the motif. And I'm going to switch it off because at the moment I don't need it. This group, it will contain all these elements which we're going to be using to arrange if we need to fill the gaps going forward. So at the moment we don't need this group, we're switching it off. Next thing, I'm going to flatten this group and I'm going to make a copy, and you will see going forward why I did it. And one copy I'll switch off. So now these two, this group of elements and this layer, they are waiting for their time to come, and we'll be working on this one. So now comes a very, very important part. So that's basically the part which will determine the seamlessness of your pattern, which is crucial, especially if you intend to sell it. You need to be absolutely sure that your pattern is completely seamless. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new layer and I'm going to fill it with color, any color. But I suggest that you create a contrasting color just so you see your elements in a good way. So I'm going to choose this light pink color and I'm just going to drag and drop it on my layer. This is how it should look on your layer stack. You've got your solid color layer and you've got your motif element. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pick these two layers and I'm going to group them into one group. And I'm going to duplicate this group 3 times. 1, 2, 3. So overall, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 groups. Why 4? Because we're going to drag each group to the corners so we create this seamless structure of our pattern. Don't worry, I'm going to show you and talk you through everything. So that's the way I usually do it. First of all, we'll need to determine the central point of our canvas, and we need to equally divide it into 4 parts. For this step, our drawing guide comes handy. So if you go to this range icon, canvas, and you switch on drawing guide, and you need to select, you can see that the grid appeared, but at this particular instance, we don't need the grid, we will need the symmetry. So if you select edit drawing guide and select symmetry here on the menu, you can see that we've got the central dividing vertical line appeared, but we need 2 lines, vertical and horizontal. for that, we will go to Options and we will select Quadrant. And you can see that it divided our canvas into 4 equal parts. What's important here is that you see properly these lines. These lines are just guides. You won't see them in the final artwork, but you just need to make sure, like for example, see, this is the like color options for that. And if you select lighter color, they're barely visible on my canvas. But if your canvas is dark, you would probably go for something lighter so they are contrasting on your background. But for my background, I need, on the contrary, like darker version of them. So I'm just going to select darker color on this hue line. And I'm going to tap Done. And you can see that it created the dividing lines. Next thing, be super careful here, because this is basically you are working on the seamlessness of your pattern, on the seamless aspect. I'm going to switch the visibility of the top 3 groups, and I'm going to start with this group. I'm going to bring the canvas slightly like so it doesn't go beyond the Procreate, so I can see the edges of it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab the Move tool and I'm going to drag this canvas so it's here in the corner. But what's important here is that once you've selected the Move tool, you go in this bottom menu and you open Snapping and you take on magnetic and snapping options. It just magically should stick your layers in the place you need. And let's see what's going to happen. So I'm going to grab, and what I need to do, I'm going to drag my layers into this corner. And you see it's kind of like intuitively snapping. And what's important, that these lines, these guidelines, they turn amber. That means that your layers are placed correctly. Next, I'm going to switch on the next group. I'm going to grab the Move tool, and now I'm going to slide it up to the top left corner, exactly in the same way. And I'm going to wait for the amber lines to appear, and do the same with the remaining 2. So I'm going to drag this one to the top right corner. Make sure that your snapping and magnetic are selected, because without them there is just no chance you can precisely place your layers to create seamless pattern. And the very last one goes here, waiting for the amber lines to appear. See, amber lines appeared. Now I can let go. And that's it. So what I created, you can see that this part is here now, this part is here, and that will create our seamless pattern. Now what we're going to do, we're going to delete these solid color layers, because we only needed them to create the solid shapes that will magnetically snap into places. We're just going to delete them. We don't need them anymore, especially that's not the color of the background I'm going to be using as a final result. So now we've got these 4 corners for seamlessness created. And this is the moment we switch our motif on. The one that we created the copy at the beginning of this step here. And there you go. And now I'm just going to play around this motif to make sure that it's placed nicely. And by the way, for that, I'm going to switch the snapping and magnetic off, because at this point it's just going to be interfering with my intentions. And I'm just going to try and see how to use it best. I think I like it that way. And that's pretty much the basis of our pattern, of our seamless pattern is ready. So technically, you can leave your pattern exactly as it is because it's already quite self-sufficient, artistically working pattern which you can use. However, I would like to show you the ways how to make your pattern a little bit complicated, how to add more elements, how to make it a little bit busier. So you can see by the looks of it that there are quite big areas of white surface uncovered with any elements. That's when our elements group comes handy. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna probably group all these layers so I know that they are there, and I'm gonna switch the elements on, and let's see what elements I can add. So I'm gonna grab this flower first, and I'm just gonna reduce the size of it and play around and see where it might fit better. So I quite like it here. Here is just completely your area of creativity. You can duplicate them. I usually like duplicate my flowers multiple times, just making sure I like the way they interact together. I quite like that. Then I'm gonna switch on this flower. I'm probably gonna make it smaller too. And I'm gonna flip it horizontal, so it's kind of looking the opposite direction from this big one. And let's see what I can place. I quite like it here. Guys, what's important to say here, with all this artistic freedom, please keep in mind that these elements at this stage, on this step you arrange, you keep them away from the edges, because at the moment we are working on a non-seamless part of our pattern. So if you drag your element too close to the edge or beyond the edge, it won't have the seamless effect, you know. So technically, because if we pull this flower there, it should technically come out of here to create this seamless effect, but this is not going to happen. You in Procreate, that's just the way it works, and it will just cut the flower and it won't appear here. So once your pattern is applied to something, you will see that the flowers will be cut. So we don't want that. That's why we keep them away from the edges. Our edge elements are only these four. And I think I'm going to duplicate this flower third time. And maybe, let's see what I can add it. Maybe add it somewhere here. And I'm going to add these flowers here and there. I like these flowers, like this kind of stamps, because they don't have any stems. You can change the size, you can scatter them around your canvas, and they will still work very nice. See, that's what you don't want to do, because it's not Affinity Designer where you can place around and the pattern is moving, so it should come from here, but it won't. That's why make sure that your element is fully within the edges of your canvas. And it looks to me that it's not busy enough. Let's make it just a touch busier. See, I'm just rotating these different flowers. I'm just gonna create maybe one more element here. Yeah, and I think that's it for the elements. And now, to just make it a little bit more intricate and interesting, I'm gonna add another layer, and this time I'll just put some stamps. For that, I'm gonna use FOLKIO Delicate Details group. And first of all, I'm gonna use the brush called Meadow Whisper 1. It's a stamp brush, and I'm gonna choose some darker color. I think I'll use this very first on the top. And I'm just gonna stamp it here, see? And I'm just gonna create each element on a new layer why on the new layer? So I can easily maneuver them around, arranging them, looking for the best way to apply it. See what I'm doing? I'm just stamping those elements and looking what the best way to arrange them. Just remember, keep them away from the edges. That's your golden rule here. So I think 3 is enough. I'm going to pinch them together. And on the new layer, I'm going to add perhaps folk leaves stamp. I'm going to probably choose some dark green color. And again, I'm just going to stamp them and move them around to see what's the best way to position them. I can play around with the sizes of them, of these elements. See, I like sometimes the elements to overlap, keeping away from the edges. So I'm gonna copy it, and let's add one here. Maybe I want to increase the size. And maybe one more, maybe right here. And I'm gonna flip it horizontally just to add some variety and some movement to the pattern. And I'm gonna pinch them together, and I can pinch them together with those Meadow Whisper. And I think I'm gonna add some berries. So I'm gonna create a new layer, and in FOLKIO Botanical Stamps, I'm going to select the brush called Berry Twig 4. And I think I'm going to use some like nice rich color. And I think it's going to be this 3rd color from the left on the top row. And let's see. And I'm just going to stamp like this and play around with the positioning of these elements. I'm going to flip horizontal. This is again completely your creative domain. You do what works for you. FOLKIO set contains so many options for these flowers, berries, different like twigs, like folk type. It's just so easy creating patterns with them. So highly recommend. And maybe one more, maybe some for here. And I think I'm quite happy. I'm going to just pinch them together. And that's basically the pattern ready. And the last thing I need to do to make sure that it's completely ready, I'm going to change the background color. This is actually a fun element because it just gives you so many options. See, this one makes some elements disappear, but you can play around and see, or even do that. Ooh, that's quite fun. So, but as I said, my intention from the very start was to use lighter background. I'll be using this one, which is like off-white cream color. And this is my pattern ready. And then the next step, we're gonna check the seamlessness and explore some other options. The pattern is ready, and now we need to make sure that it looks good. So technically you can export it as it is. For example, if you are uploading it on Spoonflower or something, this is like more than enough already to create this motif, and you know that it will repeat, creating a pattern. But I usually prefer also to check if it's really seamless, if the seamlessness intention was successful. And for that, that's a little trick. I'm going to show you how to copy the entire canvas and keep working on it later. So if you go on the range icon and select add, there is an option here that's called copy canvas. So I'm going to select it. What it did, it created a copy of all the visible layers on your stack. And you just do paste. And look what it's done. It's created a copy of everything. So basically it created the repeating part of our pattern. And what we're going to do now, we're going to do the similar process that we did a few steps back, but this time it's going to be slightly different. So follow along. I'm going to duplicate this layer with my pattern 3 times. So I have overall 4 copies of them on my stack. And I'm going to switch the visibility of the 3 of them off. And what I'm going to do, so we've got our canvas still guidelines, the canvas divided into 4 equal parts. So I'm going to take the move tool. I'm going to switch snapping and magnetic back on. And if you remember in the previous step, we would drag our artwork in the corner, but this time we're not going to do that. This time we're going to grab this corner and we're going to reduce the size of our pattern, waiting for those amber lines to appear, indicating that everything is precise. And I'm going to let go. And I'm going to repeat the process with the other 3 layers, only reducing them into all these opposite corners. So I'm going to grab this one. This time I'm going to grab this corner and reduce it, waiting for the amber lines to appear. And now the top 2 corners. There you go. So now you can see properly how our pattern is going to look like. Now, to check the seamlessness. First of all, I would like to switch these guidelines off. I don't need them anymore. I just want to make sure that there are no gaps between these 4 parts. That's definitely not something you want. So you go to that range icon, you go to canvas option, and you just switch the drawing guide off. And let's zoom in and let's have a look. I don't see any gaps in the elements, but let's also switch the background color off and see. Because if there were gaps, if there was like darker background and there were gaps in our pattern, we would see the darker lines. And they're not there. So, which means, ta-da, that our pattern has been created. In this step, it's the easy part, which is going to export our pattern. Usually you would export it going to the range icon, share, and you just select whether it's JPEG you want to export it or PDF. And that's it, that's your pattern ready. What else I would like to mention? Do you remember on the stage where we created the background of this color and copied and pasted? So if we go back, switch our background on, and this is our motif, like repeating, pattern repeat, that's going to be repeating. And I've added the background and copied and pasted together with a solid color background. Sometimes, especially when you sell your pattern, or the client is not sure which color to use, or even if you want to keep it for your own pattern library and use different colors, for example, what you do, you switch the background off, creating transparent background, and you go to canvas, go to add and do copy canvas and paste. And what it does, it creates the transparent background. And then you will need to do again drag and drop, but in this case you still need to add some solid color, because to make sure that it snaps into the right place, And you just repeat the process exactly the way we've done before, making sure drawing assist is on, making sure that magnetic snapping is on, and you just drag the corners down, waiting for the amber lines to appear. But the only difference is that now you create this helping solid colored squares, and now you have your pattern on the transparent background, and you export it as PNG with a transparent background. So if you go to the wrench icon, you select share and you choose PNG. It will export your pattern with a transparent background, which means that whoever, whether it's yourself or your client, you can put different colored layers underneath or even textured layers, and that can transform your pattern into something absolutely different. So that's another option to export your pattern. Also, I've created very simple shapes just filled with color. But if you're willing to spend a little bit more time and put more effort, you can create like different types. So, for example, see this motif I created using exactly same stamps. However, I've used different FOLKIO essential artistic brushes, like different shades and colors, and you can see that I've added different elements. And basically this set is like mixed media. There is some like waterwork going on there and the colored pencils and everything, so I've just used it. And the pattern I've created out of it, I'm gonna show you. And here's a pattern I've created out. You see, like it kind of brings the whole artwork on an entirely different level. See the elements. Again, if you want to try and use darker background, this is a pattern I created using like lighter elements of the same color, just playing around with different opacities. And the darker background, which is also quite nice. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've learned something new from my tutorial. I'm sure there is more than one way to create seamless patterns in Procreate, and please let me know in the comments if you've learned something, or there was nothing new there for you, or maybe you used some other different method that you used to create seamless patterns in Procreate. And also very important, guys, please share your artworks. I love to see the works of my students, and follow me on Instagram at my_busy_may. You can tag me, or you can always send your artworks to me directly in direct messages on Facebook or on Instagram. I always read all the messages and reply all the comments, and yeah, hope to see you soon. Thank you again. Bye bye.